Shutting up and let you talk.
Oh, it's all good, all good. Please jump in when you see something that, hey, a golden nugget to share. If you're online with us and you want to access the PDF, I did drop it in the chat. It starts at page 275, so you may have to click and drag all the way to the 200s on that PDF. And it goes from 275 to 286. All right, negotiating offers, we'll get right into it. We're in the final week of Ignite on our cycle. We went from building your real estate career with being the real estate expert, building your mission statement, your vision for what you want to accomplish, building proper habits and lead generation, most importantly, lead follow-up. I think a lot of our conversion happens to rise and fall in our ability to follow up with leads. And then ultimately the transaction. If you're going to be a solopreneur, a solo agent, thumbs up. Being as purposeful as we can in winning over the buyer, winning over the negotiation, working through the contracts will go a very long way. And of course, as we are dealing the negotiations, as we're going on appointments and capturing clientele, we have to make sure that we're still on our lead generation, still on our lead follow-up, because that will keep our confidence high. And most importantly, it'll keep us from falling into, oh, thank you, falling in the, and now I'm just gonna keep the, this way, and if people come in, they'll just sit where you guys are at. And most importantly, when you have a lot going on, like a lot of leads and a lot of follow-up that you're working on, you never feel like, oh, I need this client to close, right? Yeah, many hours we spend with our clients. And if we're only working with, like, say 4 or 5, and all of them, we need them to close because we need that money to hit our accounts, we won't be the best professional consultants and realtors that we can be for them, right? Ultimately, when we don't need the sale, we don't need the money, we tend to be at our very best for the client. And when they do close, awesome. You know, this is part of us being the consummate professional and getting deals done. Also, in negotiations, I found when, you know, look, I've been that agent who's given up a major chunk of my commission to close a deal. You know, I had the seller and I had them buying a replacement home. No joke, we gave up $10,000 of commission to close the listing and then quote unquote make it back up on the purchase. And it never feels good with me. I hated following up with them after the fact. And our whole business is built on repeat business and referral. And I couldn't stand calling that client, and they were good people. I just couldn't stand calling them because we had to give up so much to close the deal, right? So it's never a good feeling to do it. And I'm sharing this with you because that's one way to close deals, is to give up your commission and then just close the gap. But it depends how big of a gap, right? Joseph.
My personal experience went with my broker that I had, and he was also involved in giving part of his commission to make, in terms of buying, not so much a second sale, but he was able to give part of his commission. He said, I better give part of my commission because a little something is better than something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'll share some on under negotiating tips. I'll give you a real life example that we're dealing with now. Long story short, we're getting 7,500 from the seller, 1,250, 1,250 from the listing agent, 1,250 from me. My buyer's coming down from 25,000 down to 10,000, and we're all happy and moving forward, right? I mean, ultimately, it's better a little bit close the deal versus they have to start over. We need to start over. It's never any fun.
Exactly.
So what the basics are negotiating. What is negotiation? Negotiating is not something to be avoided or feared. It's an everyday part of life. If you're married, if you have kids, you're negotiating every day, right? Hey kids, we're gonna go to the zoo. No, we're gonna do it on this day, not right at this moment. We're gonna go on this day, right? My wife's like, hey, can you take this stuff to I forget, the Salvation Army? Okay, I'll do it right now, or I'll do it later. That's still a negotiation. You can either say yes to that, yes to it now, or yes to it later. It's constant. Right? We're even negotiating. We're also negotiating with gas. Do I fill up gas now where it's $7, or do I
Go to Costco.
go to Costco and sit in line for an hour and a half to save 25 cents? Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Not 25 cents.
Oh, no, you're right. It's $1.50 now.
It's
Yeah.
like 30 bucks a gallon.
So the negotiation is normal. Like we even negotiate with ourselves, like, hey, am I gonna work at the office today or work at Starbucks? You know, like the cafe, or real quick, am I gonna attend the class You know, like right now, I was negotiating, hey, do I speak? Oh, I was negotiating, but do I come in or do I make calls? Joseph.
Yeah, we come
Sure.
right here,
Mhm.
not at the right gas station, the left gas section. I was putting up gas, and of course, it's the rich community. Someone in front of me, she looked like an asshole lady, she had a nice SUV. And she filled up her gas, and she turned around and told me, I can't believe I just spent $150 to fill up my gas.
Oh, yeah.
So it goes, even for the rich, I just want to share that with you.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone, we are all in the same boat.
I don't know. I would hope so. I went to Costco with two of my kids and we just bought snacks. And I thought, you know, the lady checking us out, I thought she double clicked on some of the merchandise because the bill was like so high. It's like $325 for chips and snacks and spam and stuff like that. And I was like, Max, like, hang on, let's just double check everything.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, this stuff.
It
Yeah.
was crazy, yeah, even cost.
I should have done some more negotiating as we were like putting stuff in the cart. Yeah.
I've never been on.
You should stop going that
Yeah.
stop.
We went there for some snacks and we ended up like a cart full of stuff and it was
But it's
insane.
way cheaper. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
it lasts longer. You gotta
It
do
beat
it.
Smart and Final, and I thought Smart and Final was more affordable inside.
It's expensive.
Yeah, so again, to feed in the point, we're literally negotiating at the grocery store, we're negotiating with ourselves, our businesses. We even think about this, like, am I gonna prospect my neighborhood, or am I gonna prospect my sphere of influence, my cell phone? You know, that's a negotiation with ourselves. And when we think of negotiation as a whole, we're dealing with agents on the other side, our clients, negotiating contracts. Think of everything that we negotiate through this process, win-win or no deal, integrity, always doing the right thing, customers, always, clients, always coming first. Commitment in all things that we use, communication, seeking first to understand the whole picture of what's going on before we jump to conclusions, right? On our client side, we wrote a $25,000 request for repairs. I didn't think anything of it. I should have been the one to prepare the listing agent instead of good old veteran listing agent taking this and the seller feeling like it's a slap in the face. You're asking us for so much. No, we're literally asking you for what you would make repairs on if you were to continue living in the house,
Right.
right? But I didn't seek that communication. I just kind of took for granted that the Pinnacle agent, won't say her name,
Right.
has the same type of belief system. No, she's a
Right.
robot. She just sent it over to them, right?
Right.
Creativity, ideas before results, teamwork, together, everyone achieves more. Trust starts with honesty, equity, opportunities for all, and success results through people. So when we think of it, at a minimum, think of it as win-win or no deal, right? How can we make this a win in the eyes of the seller as much as for the buyer? And sometimes you're just kind of preparing it with the other agent, like, hey, John or Guada in this case, this is what we're sending over. This will make our client feel good inside if we at least ask. I know it's a big ask, but let us know what works. But just let your client know it's nothing personal. It's just this is what they need if they're going to repair the roof, repair the foundation, repair the plumbing, blah 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 blah. Right?
Yeah.
Just a side comment, that happened to me personally, on my previous brokerage, there was a house, me and my broker were making an offer on that needed some extensive work because the Northbridge and Northbridge had a earthquake damage before.
Oh yeah.
Lo and behold, the chimney needed some work. So, even my broker didn't prepare the listing agent regarding the fact of the repair that needs to be done. So, lo and behold, we made a repair offer and we got canceled. And they didn't want to do, not only did they want to do any repair, they canceled the offer. Just to let you know, you have to be very tactful when you ask for, general for all the new. If you want the other party to repair most of the other listing agent, you gotta be very tactful and very easy, so it doesn't get canceled and you have to start over.
Oh yeah.
That's the one of the information.
Yeah, absolutely. And something we covered in the last call when we're working with buyers and sellers is build equity with the other agent, even if we're on the buyer side. It starts with our text message or however we set the showing appointment with. Build that equity early on. Bless you, I think. I think that was a bless you. Okay, awesome. Part half of a negotiation, there are two options after an offer is presented. This is super 101. Option one, offer is accepted and we close. Woo! Yeah, that's awesome. We're done, right? Option two, and option two happens more times than not. Offer is rejected or it can be countered and we negotiate like crazy. We go back and forth. until we find a happy space. Offer gets accepted, rejected, or it goes back to negotiation and eventually we close. Right? If I had a whiteboard, I would just draw squiggly line after squiggly line. Sometimes that's how some of our deals feel. But you know, and I will say this, if you time block negotiating your contracts into 2 parts of your day, or maybe 3 parts of your day, early in the morning, you can reply to emails. Midday after lunch, you have your second win. And then at the end of day, right before 5 or just after 5 o'clock, and that's it. You know, don't take your calls at night when you're out having dinner or hanging with the family. Don't do it in the middle of the morning when you're prospecting, lead generating. Don't do it too middle of the afternoon when you're on appointments. Just kind of time block those 3 spots and you're rock solid. Joseph.
Yes, I was going to make another comment on negotiation. It's better for the listing agent, not to cancel because they have to make, the reason why they cancel and they don't want to go through the whole thing. And usually the advice is that the first offer is your best offer and you have to negotiate what you're offering and all that stuff. So that's an ace in your pocket if you negotiated, say you don't want to go through this again, you have to make it acceptable to other agents. So
Yeah,
you
you have
want
to
to give a
redisclose.
little bit disclose, you want to
Yeah.
give a little bit, but not too much to negotiate. That you look like a good guy, but you still have the ace card in your sleeve.
Yeah, totally. Nobody wants to start from ground zero. In the event that you do, a buyer loses their job or whatever, you built rapport with the other agents that you're dealing with. If you're on the listing side, you prepared your clients for the worst case scenarios as well, right? It's not always 100% that we open and close on the first one. Financing issues, market issues, just challenges happen. Heck, your seller might cancel, you know, because they can't move to Florida anymore, whatever it may be. These are who you basically negotiate. If you're the listing agent, seller's agent, you're working with the seller's buyer's agent. You know, if you're the buyer's agent or you're working with the buyer and seller's agent. And then you also have to kind of take for face value that the realtor on one side is being as honest as they can be and as transparent as they can be. Some is complete jerk off and will lie to you. And that eventually comes out, right? But nonetheless, you kind of have to really play your cards right. I tend to be super transparent, like, hey, this is what our clients can do. But there's some things, you know, or I'm representing the listing agent or I'm representing the seller that I won't tell the seller, right? Like, hey, the buyer thinks you're a complete moron and they're gonna push and throw all this stuff at us. I might translate that to, hey, Terry Lynn, you know, the buyer's asking for what I would consider egregious things. But you know what, for them to feel good about what's going on, let them ask. And let's get a proper response to their recommended, to their request, right?
That hearing appreciation, that handling objection. That's very good.
Absolutely, before it becomes an issue. Yeah, do I think the request is 8 balls crazy? Absolutely, I think it's done, right? But whatever my emotions are, but I'm gonna translate it to, hey, you know what, every buyer wants their best shot. Let's give them a great response and let's call it a day. And I'm already in talk with John, the buyer's agent, and we're already working through a solution. But this will make them sleep good at night knowing that they've asked for all these repairs. You know, and again, never have them take it personally. And then reverse for the buyer's side, like, hey, I know we asked for a ton. This is what I'm working with on the agent. Yes, these are things that we need to address, but also know that they can just go back to market. They can run the risk of finding another buyer to offer this. They lose us, but do you really want to lose the house? You know, over something that we can mitigate or negotiate, and off we go. Common points of negotiation, usually price, cost of the property, terms, financial, time-based, or both. It might be something as simple as, hey, the 2-1 buy down. But in order to get the 2-1 buy down, we'll add the buy down into the purchase price. So now, hey, you as a seller are still getting what you want. It's 100% based on the inspection and the appraisal. You got an action, right? But on the offset, we're going to give you, Mr. Seller and Mrs. Seller, what you want in terms of numbers, and we're going to get for the buyer that 2-1 buy down built into the purchase price.
Can you give us an example of what about that?
Absolutely.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, totally. So you, a 2-1 buy down is a chance where the seller can pay for 2 years worth of closing costs for the seller, or sorry, 2 years worth of interest for the buyer. In year 1, they're buying down 2% of their interest. So if they're at 7.5, they go down to a 5.5 in year 1. And in year 2, they're buying down 1% of the interest. So from a 7.5 to 6.5% interest. In year 3, the buyer's interest goes back to the original 7.5%, right? And the idea is that it gives them 2 years of breathing room. They qualify for the 7.5,
Right.
but then they're not paying, and they're paying a reduced interest in year 1 and year 2. And then in year 3, they can, cross your fingers, they can refinance, worst case scenario, they save that money. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And the way it works, you can have the seller pay for that based on the purchase price is one of the terms. Or one of the ways we got our offer accepted said, hey, our clients need this, but we're not going to be the one asking to pay it. We're going to just tack it on top of the purchase price. So purchase offer was $950, $955, we'll make it $976 to get that $21,000 rate buy down. And your loan officer can do the work the numbers on what that cost would be for their loan.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah,
They increase the 21,000 for the price, then they get their money from the seller in the escrow.
yes,
So the seller's really not paying anything.
almost, yeah.
If
Yeah,
it
as long as
appraises,
it appraises.
as long as it
Yeah.
appraises, you can up it to whatever price and have the seller get back whatever money you want.
And right now, we're in this weird twilight where if you go back 6 months, we're essentially in May, April, May, or let's say we're in May, June, you can make the argument that was like the last of our big prices, right? Like,
That's crazy.
yeah, well, interest rates at that point, if you lock them in, were 4 to 5%. One would argue that that's like the last holdouts of big value. Then when you get into June, kind of it starts sloping. And when we're in May or April, and we're looking back on September, October, November, hits. We might not be able to pull that off, or we're tacking on the 20,000 or 30,000 on top because the appraisal may not come in. But to our advantage, if they're motivated to sell, maybe we get that and the reduction.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
the concept of 2-1 buy down is very similar. If his house is listed for $950 and you're right, you're the buyer's agent.
Mhm.
So you would go 20,000 above the asking price, and then you would ask $20,000, approximately 2% is about $20,000. So you write the offer for $970, even the seller gets $950, but $20,000 goes toward closing costs.
Yeah.
It's similar to that.
Absolutely, exactly. And we want to build it in, make it a win-win as much as possible. Like we talked about win-win or no deal, communication, seek first to understand. At our last Ignite, we were talking about communicating with the seller, or sorry, the listing agent or the buyer side and say, hey, what would make this a winning offer for your client? Right? Like tell us the terms, the escrow company, what makes sense for them. Do they need days on the property? We used to do that a lot. Now it counts more than ever because there's not that many, buyer agents out there bringing in qualified buyers, offering what the sellers want.
Yes.
And B, at the same, oh yeah,
I
your thing.
gotta go with that. I just realized it's already 2:23.
No, I'm with you. I do the same thing. I gotta get the kids like before 3:15. So high five there. 3 keys of negotiation: prepare, present, position. Right, preparation is the key to building confidence, ensuring a smooth negotiation process. We kind of covered some of those points. Present, move into the negotiation process by presenting the offer. That can happen working with sellers, and a lot of times that can be done over the phone, unless your client's like super like, hey, I want an in-person presentation. With the buyer side, that we typically have handled it on phone, Zoom, and text message. And then lastly, position, move both parties closer until you have a full agreement. Prepare your goal, and most goals is really going to be, hey, let's get this client to owning the house, right, or selling their house. Our goal is almost the client's goal. Know your client. If they tend to be overreactive to things, I tend to hold back certain text messages. Like I'm not going to let them know that the agent called my seller a complete moron for whatever. We're not going to make it personal, right? We're going to keep the hot head and keep the ego out, right? Think ahead, plan ahead. If I know going into it, my clients are having issues with certain days for the inspection because of homework, working from home or working, doing school from home or whatever, then we're going to prepare for stuff like that. Set clear expectations. If I'm working with the seller, let them know like, hey, as much as work as you put into the home, the home's perfect, right? every home inspector will find something, because it's their job to find something quote unquote wrong with the house. Otherwise, they're not doing their job, right? And then as a buyer, let them know, like, hey, we're representing the buyer. It's, hey, know that the inspector, no home is perfect. We're gonna find things wrong with the home. And we may not get every single credit for every single repair. However, we're gonna do our best. And just know that the seller may have options. You may have options to move, but we're gonna find a happy medium, a happy middle place for both sides, right? Never say, hey, we're gonna find everything that's wrong with the house and get you every repair. Even in this market, I wouldn't say that, never play chicken, right? Be informed, know the area, know the agent that you're getting involved with. I tend to make phone calls to find out if anybody knows the person we're working with. Like, oh, Maureen's done a ton of transactions, but if we weren't working with her, I might go to my network and say, hey, have you ever worked with so-and-so from so-and-so, right? Obeying laws, that's kind of a no-brainer. Know the documents inside and out. Now, I will say number 7, learn by failing forward. Now, don't make such a terrible mistake that you get sued, right? But the 4 documents you need to be most familiar with is your RPA, your RR, request for repairs, and the seller response. It's the RRRR. And then you need to know your own avid. So I guess there's a couple, TDS and SBQ. Those are your 5 major items. You'll get familiar with the counter offer, addendums, stuff like that. But the big 5, RPA, RR, RR, SPQ, TDS, right? And the reason, and avid, so that's 6, ADID. Those are your 6 forms, and mainly these 6 forms because the TC does not deal with that stuff. They collect it, they make sure it gets signed off on. But if you're the buyer agent, you have to review the SPQ and TDS. If you're the listing agent, you have to make sure you collect that from your client. And no matter what, you want to make sure you know the ins and outs of the RPA, which I think Stephanie actually may have recorded this one. So she did the class on Saturday. That recording may have gone out today. You guys were on Zoom or in person. That's the one. So there you go. Oh yeah, fire away, Alessandra.
Sorry, can you hear me? Could you repeat those 6 documents one more time? I should make sure I have them.
Oh yeah, totally. The first one is the RPA. Then your request for repairs, or RR. The seller response to a request for repairs, which is the RR, 4 Rs. Then it's the your own agent avid, AVID, agent visual inspection disclosure, the seller TDS, and the seller SPQ.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then there's like a slew of other disclosures we need, but they're like boilerplate. They just get sent out. They get DocuSigned. They get reviewed. And remember, I keep sharing this, but we technically aren't allowed by law to explain the contracts to the client. So they really should be reading through it themselves. And I give them as much of a summary as you can get, like, hey, TDS and SBQ are really forms that the seller must disclose of their knowledge of the property from anywhere between 3 to 5 years. Our inspection may be contrary to what they're telling us, but this is to the best of their knowledge, right? And then if I'm on the seller side, listing side, I'm like, hey, you really have to disclose everything you know about the property, and they're going to have their inspection. They'll become part of the disclosure. I'll do my walkthrough, and we'll leave it at that.
Property is investment property, the seller has to fill up SPQ and TDS.
Well, so the assumption is that if you're the investor who bought the property, you can state that you never lived in it. But when it goes to court, can that person say, I never showed up at the property? Maybe because they were out of state when they bought it. So they can truly put in as a seller, I've never lived in the property. I'm answering to the best of my knowledge from my disclosures that I received in buying the house. I would even say that hey, we bought this house at this date. We did renovation, construction, and we changed these items in the house. And I leave it at that. So at least if it ever went to court, they can say, hey, we disclosed that we gutted it, but I never had seen anything there. Yeah.
There are two examples that would counter that. One example, if the house goes for sale, probate.
Yes.
And if you buy the house in foreclosure, so you don't have to disclose Now, if it's foreclosure, even if someone died in there.
Well, the bank doesn't have to, or the trustee.
If you're buying the property at the foreclosure.
Right, but you're the buyer. Hey, what's up, please? Hey, you're the buyer though, but then the bank doesn't have to disclose,
I
but
know,
they can't fill it out.
I know, let's say if you buy the house at the probate or foreclosure for resale, you buy the house, you're gonna have to disclose if someone passed away by the condition.
Oh, you wouldn't have known.
That's correct.
Right.
Those are the two examples.
But
I was-
then-
I was gonna say there are two exceptions to that, foreclosure and it is also.
But the person inheriting it, because she's facing a lawsuit now, but her parents did die in the property. And I told her over and over, hey, you need to disclose this.
Yeah, that's different, but
Right.
she never lived on the property.
She never lived, but she still knew about it. And it's kind of a gray line, like if you know about it, even though you're the trustee,
Everybody knows what's correct. what's
Yeah.
not. They know what they should be doing.
right, she's facing a lawsuit now, and my
Well,
other broker's getting sued too. But we have it in email, so when I sent them all the
Thank you
paperwork,
for the information.
yeah, I sent them
More
screenshots,
information about it.
it never hurts. And you know what, when in doubt, just over disclose. What's like an extra sentence, to do it, otherwise we all have to lawyer up, it's crazy.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for bringing that up, that's a great point.
I know that throughout the years. That number was.
For sure. And on this slide, ask purposeful questions, provide insight on where you and your client will have leverage. And on that note, you kind of look for the stuff that stands out, right? The leverage point might be, hey, we were the only offer they were negotiating with, right? When I worked with, Guada, there were some other offers, but they were FHA offers. They would have to deal with FHA appraisal, repairs, all that stuff. Okay, we might have some wiggle room there. Set clear expectations like we talked about. You see that one helps you learn what will make it a win-win negotiation for both parties. Everyone, they said the best negotiation is where someone feels like they're a little hurt, right? Like if they feel like they got a little ripped off on both ends, it's a good negotiation. Because nobody really gets everything that they want. And I say ripped off, maybe I should say they feel a little bit of a little bit of pain. Like the seller wants $1 million. Buyer wants it for 950,000, right? And then they agree at 975. And then not exactly $1 million, not exactly 950. When it comes to repairs, the buyer's like, hey, there's $30,000 for repairs. I want the credit or the price reduction. Well, the seller might say, well, no, I don't want to give them all of that. Let's meet in the middle. There's always going to be some sort of give and take situation. Ask open-ended questions versus closed-ended questions. For example, this is an open-ended question, has unlimited response options. What additional information should I know? What is important about closing in 30 days? How do you feel about that? A closed-ended question usually ends with a yes or no, or one word. You have to sell your home by a specific date. No, I don't. Well, what date would you go past, right? How long do you feel you can hang on to the property? Do you have any other offers? Or are there, my favorite is, are there any other favorable offers that you're negotiating? Right, so then that just kind of changes it to favorable, meaning, hey, are they as good as we can be, us working together, or is it just a total, like, hey, you're just getting low ball offers? What is the bottom line price you would consider? That's asking for a price, right? I love to kind of leave it open with the agent and say, hey, what price would get your seller to move, right? I mean, my buyers have a number in mind based on the interest rate, based on their payment, but will it match your client's goals, right? What and why questions, what would happen if, helps you explain the next steps of the negotiation, right? So when you're explaining it to our clients, our education, our communication with our clients, think of it as education for them, right? And you're almost going to have the same conversation with every client. They're learning for the first time, or they're learning through you as like, wow, I've never had this experience. I'm actually learning how to do this deal, right? Why is it important to you? It helps you gain more information, gain more insights. So if someone tells me, like the last night at a listing appointment, 1.5 million is our number. Great. Why is that important to you? Why is selling for 1.5 million important to you? And then they actually tell us, like, well, we want to buy our next house all cash at $1.2 million, $1.3 million. And we want to have money left over to repair it. Makes total sense. What if we found you the same home in the same area for $1 million? Do you still need to sell for $1.5 million? Well, it would be good, you know, the kind of response, but Philip, if you did find us a home closer to our daughters, and we were able to get that type of home with RV parking, yes, it would help us to buy the $1 million and then we could sell for a lot less.
Good point. Very good.
Right, so now when they're not married to this number, that's truthfully unrealistic for the house, you know, their specific house, needs some work, other factors. But if we ended up listing at $1,250,000, which we did, and we sold it for, let's say, the best we could, $1,350,000 or $1,400,000, they're not incredibly hurt that we sold less than $1.5 million, but hey, look, we're gonna sell for this number. Philip, can we find a deal at $1.1 million or $1 million, and we'll fix it up ourselves? Absolutely. You know, so then that allows you to kind of have that dialogue, as opposed to getting into a battle of it must be this number. No, it must be this number.
I like it.
It's also a good question to ask them, how did you reach the number? What information do you have in the market that you think that property is all that? That's a good question, and then sending them, so they can tell you, well, I like to sell, I said,
Well,
I like to sell even more than 1.5, but you have to be realistic what the market, we are not the determination of the market, whatever the market allows us to sell it for.
yeah, and I'll throw this on top of that. The client and customer is always correct, right? And they were right. You know, if they had hit the button in November or December of last year,
Of course.
you know, they could have sold it for $1 million, and whatever it is. Right. Well, let's get this portion or this is like take action scenario. I think we've gone through a couple like examples already of that. Best practices when presenting, call the other agent, pay attention to non-verbal cues like pauses and voice qualities. You know, sometimes they have a high pitched voice because they're trying to hide a lie, or maybe they're I can hear you, I can see you not, you know, shaking your head because
Because I just called the escrow and I had a suspicion with the seller. And I told the agent, I have a feeling she gonna take the washer and dryer. And he
Yeah.
said, no, he won't do that. And I told the assistant, I have a feeling, so in particular, I can move it, they could, and they replace it with the junkyard. And I think
That's
they
disrespectful.
would do it in fixing
And
the
you
door.
can
I
feel
thought
for that.
I told the person in washer dryer, they said, no, they're fixing the door.
sure.
And she was stupid. Now, everything was so smooth, now I'm stuck. So what do you say? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she was talking fast and hiding her, look. And I felt it, no, something is wrong, and I was correct.
Yeah, and you know, you capture those things
It goes
right
back,
away.
it goes back to your offer, was the washer and dryer that you initially negotiated with, was that, did you include that in the sale? In the purchase price, or no, that was just?
Of course, everything was there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Included.
then in the walkthrough, the last walkthrough before.
What was there?
It was
the
after,
last day,
yeah,
was
it was the
like-
day they were moving out. And
Oh, sorry about that.
you know, it sucks. There is a form you can pursue. You have to go through mediation and arbitration
Yeah.
if you really want to pursue it.
Yeah, hopefully agent guarantee he's gonna be happy, and let's see what he's gonna do.
So, yeah, it will go to mediation. Yeah, so,
Insulting intelligence.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the-
That's exactly.
right. It won't, honestly, once it goes to arbitration, the other side will lose. Because
Of course.
you get a panel of your peers, you know,
The inspection report shows that.
Yeah, the picture,
pictures on there.
right,
yeah.
on MLS, yeah. It's gonna cost the agent and seller like more money than just to like send it back.
Yeah.
And we've had that, by the way, where a client, Monica will know them, it was Kathy and Art and Kathy. And Kathy said, you know, she's an agent now, I think, and she did something really dumb where we sold a house and it was the washer dryer that was there, but she went ahead and swapped out the washer dryer with the one in her condo, crappy one.
Yeah.
Swapped it out, and then, you know, agent's like, hey, Philip, you know, I know you've been really good about this, but hey, they swapped out the washer dryer. So, you know, she never forgave me about this. So I called her and said, hey, we need to swap them back. You can't just,
Yeah.
you know, but it just says washer dryer. It didn't say what kind. I'm like, really? No, it's the one that they saw on MLS that we have on pictures, the one that they saw at the open house, the one that they saw at inspections, and the one that they saw at the final walkthrough. Yeah, you have to like disconnected and
Yeah.
squatted.
And probably that was one of the reasons they bought the house. I know it's
Yeah,
hard to
that's
say.
one of the factors, you know.
They paid a ton of money for your
Wash
home.
and dry, I mean, just leave that, I mean, the used wash and dry, and
Yeah,
probably buy a new one much cheaper. I mean,
Going-
How much value does that have?
going back to this, win-win or no deal, trust starts with honesty, right? That last T over there. Customers always come first. Number two, integrity, do the right thing.
And the funny thing,
You
I
know?
told the agent and also even I told the escrow, can you keep $1,000 in escrow after they move out? We can release.
As long as they agree to it, then
And
yeah,
and the
absolutely.
agent said, you guys gonna be happy.
Yeah, so to your point, pay attention to nonverbal cues and to voice qualities,
Yeah.
right? They're talking really strong at the open house, and then all of a sudden you're asking over the phone. It's a weird game. Sometimes we never meet the other agent. You know,
That's your.
sometimes it's just voice call and maybe text messages, group emails, whatever. But the voice aspect, just hearing the crack in your voice or them avoiding our calls also tells a lot. I'm not one to like call every hour, but I might call twice in a day if it's something important. But if after 4 or 5 calls around answering in the middle of escrow, I know something's up. The loan is like going south, if they're the buyer agent, their TC is not replying to our TC, there's always those signs. Position, acknowledge and affirm common ground. The customer's always right. We grew up hearing that, and it's true, right? What they see and what they accept to believe is true. Ask, so just acknowledge what they see as perfect. Like, hey, you know what? Seeing the payment being $7,500 a month, the interest rate almost 8%, your budgets. Hey, Albert, Sire, I 100% agree with you. Those are real, right? Now we ask what and how question. Let me ask you, what if, fast forward the clock, we put you in a condo instead of this house in West Hills, we get you in a condo in Winnetka. Tell me about how you're raising your family in a condo versus this home. A little bit of a sacrifice today to get this house, but I don't want to guarantee anything, but if we hold out and we don't get this house now, this home will be $1,050,000, $1,001,000, and you're not going to be able to get it straight.
Liability.
Well, no, if you're guaranteeing something, absolutely liability. What we're presenting in this scenario is, hey, they want the house, but if you want to cut your payment down, great. Yeah, you totally buy in the same area, but you're buying a condo or a smaller house versus this house. And so the comparison would be, this is a little bit easier because of the differences. El Camino School District or non-El Camino School District at the offset. Right, high rent already in the neighborhood. You have neighbors paying $6,000 to rent a house. All that fun stuff.
That comes to me, well, because I had, before this, during the pandemic, I had a client, as we were making negotiations, every house they're putting their hands on over a period of about 6 months, it went up. And I told them, look,
Yeah.
with all the houses going up, the best thing to do, if you like the area, you want to be Northridge or you want to be Winnetka, you're gonna have to buy a condo. And that's going to be bad. They ended up buying condo. I just want to confirm what you said was true.
100%.
Because of what happened to me as well.
Oh yeah, know that positioning of the process. Sometimes you're not going to get it all on the first call. You might get some information from your buyer, even as you're showing homes. You're still positioning yourself with them, and it's weird because it's like, God, it sounds like a lot of work, but it's not when you're thinking, okay, the purpose of this next hour and a half of showing homes is to gain more trust with my clients, find out more, what can we disqualify them on, like what homes don't work, what are some of their hot points, especially when they don't have kids, it's a little harder, because now it's almost like trying to find out what do they want in terms of the future, right? Yeah, I see a lot with us as agents, and we're working on goals. It's hard to coach without knowing what that person wants. Right, on the other end of doing all this work.
That's a good point.
It's like we do all this work and the goal is like, oh, I just want to do one deal. I'm like, okay, well, live life and just refer business. Like, don't do this work. It's really hard to make 30,000, but it's very easy to make 300,000. Yeah, it sounds stupid, right? But when you work so hard and your goal is one deal, it's like it wasn't worth it. But if your goal is like 300,000, all the work makes sense and it's super easy to do. And know when to walk away.
That's true too.
Always feel
That-
comfortable
that
walking
way-
away.
that way.
Yeah, and when you're the listing agent or buyer agent and you're like, all right, guys, let's bail, let's walk away from this. Oh my God, the other side is like, whoa, don't go. Yeah, let's work it out. Let's find a happy place. And sure enough, we find that. You find it. You know, when you're the one who's like, I need this very badly, man, your side gets hit hard.
I know, that's what I tell all my clients. I said, when you see a house that you like,
Mhm.
don't make any reactions you want to have, or just go nonchalant, by the way. But don't give any impression that you really like to have, because if you do, then you're gonna lose.
Yeah.
Because they will see that you really want it, they will, your negotiations will be. start out a
That's
little
something
bit.
I tend to fight that a little bit, but I do tell,
That's
I'll call
my
the
knowledge.
agent, I'm with you, I'll call the agent and just say, hey, you know what, no lie, they totally love the house. Yeah,
I always
Yeah.
recommend, the last couple,
right,
when they love it, so I went to the seller, so they love it, and I give you a similar offer, hopefully they're gonna leave here as happy as you leave. They touch it because they live there and they grow, they raise their family, emotionally they're attached, and they, it's like a precious thing, they wanna pass it to someone who appreciate. One of my clients was on Persian Armenian, she loved her kitchen.
Mhm.
And whoever was coming to see the house, she said to us, like, did you see? She loved it. She loved to sell the house if someone comes and admire
Right.
her design. She put some ugly, strong.
Okay.
Funny.
That was important. to her.
Can I make a comment on your comment? Okay, kitchens always sell the house to the ladies of the house. Kitchen is number one. Look, there's nothing about the house, it's the kitchen and the bathroom,
No, that's true.
and just the yard, it doesn't matter, I mean, bedroom is just full wall.
Yeah,
The
meaning,
kitchen and the bathroom sell the house, and of course, you're the lady house,
Front
you love the kitchen, or they don't.
yeah.
But kitchens sell that, whether you are Armenian, it doesn't matter, or Chinese, it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
Compliments, sometimes they
Compliments, yeah.
eat them with whatever they want to do it because they can enjoy the house.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I will say for,
Yeah,
so
I
owner,
have transactions for them.
yeah, owner occupants, I think, tend to like, so. Like if they're buying it for themselves, they tend to be very emotional, and it's like, great, let's share that with the agent. And I will say things like, well, one thing I noticed, there's a giant crack in the living room. Yeah, that's probably something we may want to address. Agents like, yeah, we know about it, it's like an ongoing problem, whatever, right? But at least I can plant the seed that, hey, it's not they love the house, it's not absolutely perfect. That's also my way of saying, hey, at some point, we're gonna ask for request for repairs.
That's a very
You
good
know,
point.
or we're gonna adjust the price based on condition. My investor clients tend to, hey, Philip, don't show any emotion. Like, hey, this is a business deal, and we treat it as such, like, hey, John, we saw the house, clients aren't exactly in love with it, and this is really a flip for them. And this is what they're willing to offer on the house. There's a lot of issues, potential issues with the home. They're willing to buy it as is. We know this is the roof that needs to be dumped. They're gonna gut the whole house. And this will likely be their offer. And it'll be all cash or hard money, and it'll close in 10 days. And then, yeah, sometimes you probably have clients like that.
That's a very good point, because whenever I go on a house showing to my clients, I let the house show all those positive sides, but the people who say, oh, this is not yard, I like the backyard. But I tend to very discreetly tell them this and that, so they know the house is not perfect.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
It's a good point to say, well, there's a crack here, there's a feeling here. I told them that's what we see, but we have to do an inspection, making sure. I just want to let you know that there's no, I'm not changing your expectations, because even though you like the house, there are some things that I need to improve. So there's no any false expectation.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
them like that. That's my experience.
There you go. And like the last negotiation said, be professional, right? Never take things personal, never make it personal, right? Keep your goal in mind. And the goal is, honestly, it's just helping the client as best you can make the best decisions for themselves, right? We can never force anybody to buy a house or sell a house. At the end of the day, it's like they're the horse and we're just guiding them to the next place, right? Pay attention to your communication and tone with anyone involved in the transaction. I tend to fail that too. That's why I never make these calls when I'm at home, or I try not to at night for sure. I don't do them like when I'm when I should be prospecting, then I feel weird and upset that I'm not getting appointments or getting leads or following up with people. And I likely won't do it when I have events going on. So I kind of set it up to where I might send my first wave of text messages out at the early start of the relationship with them and lock it in, right? I handle requests for repairs always late afternoon or after lunch at, never in the morning, when everyone's all riled up, wait after lunch, make that call. Hey, Wada, this is what we need to do. This is where we're at. We want to close that gap. What can we do to close that gap? And when it comes to updating my clients, I do it by text message late in the afternoon. And I always end it with, hey, likely we're not going to get an answer tonight. Let's sleep on it. And first thing in the morning, we'll check and see where the other side is at. I might get back to you tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. Right? So now I don't have to answer them at night. Don't have to necessarily answer them first thing in the morning unless it's imminent. And then in the afternoon, I can call them after lunch. Everyone's good. Off we go. So it's positioning those items. Continually refer to your client's motivation when speaking with them. Like for example, are we really going to let this house go over $5,000? Well, Philip, now at this point, principle, like, oh God, okay. So then now it's personal, right? And then you have to kind of work back on your motivation. Hey, this comes close by where you want to send your daughter. This house has, parking for your trucks, for your landscaping trucks. Hey, it's 5 minutes away from mom and dad's house. All of these items to remind them, like almost how ridiculous it is to let your ego get in the way. Oh yeah, and that means you're doing good. That's what you're doing. Awesome. Keep doing that. Don't change that. Don't reveal too much. Listen more than talk. Keep your client's motivation close to your chest. At times, so on your thread, you were saying, hey, client loves the house. Now, I'm not going to tell them that their daughter lives right across the street or next door, and that's why they really want to buy the house, is because, hey, we can pick it up right next door from here. Now, I won't say that portion, right? I might just keep that for my buyer and not tell them.
But if there's one fall back, you say, oh, your daughter is.
Yeah, well, I'll remind the buyer, but I won't tell you, the listing agent. I won't tell you that. Like, ooh, daughter's next door. Hey, let's. We're not giving them any repairs. We know they're going to buy the house there, right? And they'll be attached to the outcome. That's the coolest thing. That I always say things happen for a reason, right? Like so if the deal goes south and it cancels, we dodged a bullet. Whatever that is, we dodged a bullet, and we're gonna, God closes one door, opens five. Yeah.
That's a very good comment. You say your daughter lives across the street. I want to make a comment. It didn't happen too far from me in Calabasas. It's happened in Kanye West. After the divorce with Kim Kardashian, we wanted to buy the house that was across, and the media knew about it, and the listing agent knew about it, and he thinks he paid too much for his house. Even though he has a lot, he's a billionaire, but I mean, even if you're a billionaire, you still think about, you still want to think about how much you're buying a house. But yeah, he was criticized about buying a house across the street, and the whole world knows about that. He bought the house across the street to be close to his daughter.
You're stupid.
Okay. You know what? No comment. I agree with you, but no comment.
Yeah, to that point, it is, on ending on that note. AHA's daily success system. Keep in mind, guys, 10 conversations a day, add 10 contacts to your database, 10 handwritten notes, the 10-5-1, like 10 posts, comment on 5, DM, post 1. I'm telling you guys, I'm doing it myself. I'm doing a daily 10-4. I'm not doing a bold 100. I'm not calling 1,000 cold calls. I'm focused on 10 conversations.
That's
right.
Realistic.
Right. I'm probably making 20 contacts, 22 contacts, 25 contacts. The key there is the conversation. Who am I talking to that genuinely has a real estate concern that we can help address?
So when you call, as long as you speak to 10 people, you're done for the day.
Almost. I mean, I'll push myself a little bit. If they were like 10, I don't want to talk to you. So they're like,
No.
Yeah,
Conversation.
right. 10 conversations is ideal, because some of those could be past clients, could be for people, like people that constantly refer you or you refer them. It could be a referral that you're following up with. It could be, a lot of it's lead follow-up. someone who wasn't ready 6 months ago, they might be ready now, and life is happening to them, right? Like whatever life is for them. And hey, we're here as a sounding board for them, and we're here as a resource and consultant.
Something else that came to my mind, and this will help you, because when you're making 10 covers, let's say you're making 15 conversations a day, making calls, and then all of a sudden, if you have 1 or 2 realistic appointments that may lead into, so, and then next thing you start, and if you call 15, nothing has happened, then you want to go a little bit further. So you said, oh, well, yesterday I had one person that was interested in property. I want to make sure I get another person there. So this will continue to go forward. Before you know it, you may be making more than 10 calls a day, maybe 20. Just motivation, just motivation.
Absolutely. If you start your morning with
One morning.
the first 30 minutes, whenever you start your call, make that what we call our first and 10. The first call that you made, and just make the rest of your day easier. Sometimes it is calling the other agent on the other side of the field, just to like, okay, got that off my chest, and then calling your buyer or seller and getting those heavy calls off. With Matt's coaching of my coach, he says the very top priority call you can make is a price reduction, right? So if you have listings and they're overpriced, first best call to make to start the week or start the day, get a price reduction. We know if a house isn't selling, it's not the pictures, it's not the marketing, it's not that we're not having open houses or having them. It's nothing more than price. It's $1 million and it should be sold for 800. Well, we need a price reduction. The second one is, who can I call that is currently in escrow that we can help get to close, right? So sometimes it is calling an agent and working through deals. Sometimes calling your buyer or seller, letting you know, hey, this is what we need in order to facilitate. After that, it would then be like, who can I get a listing with today? Like, who can I call this moment that will get me a listing appointment and list them this week, today, this weekend, very, very soon. The next one is, which of my buyers are in the field who are qualified that we can write offers on and open escrow? Same with the listing. After that, or which buyers can I get under contract? And after a while of doing that, you're not going to have that laundry list every day, right? At some point, it might just be one call for 15, 30 minutes, whatever, to get that off your shoulders. And then everyone says start with lead generation. I say no, start with lead follow-up. Start with, oh, yeah, you got it, Mo. Start with, who did you call the last year or 2 years that you can call today and say, hey, market's finally changed. If you're thinking of making that move to fill in the blank, this could be the time to do it, because here's why. And then we just talked about 2-1 buy down, request for repairs, terms, lower price. Yeah, interest rate higher, but now you're getting the house on your terms. And then after that, once you kind of hit your lead follow-up for 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, then start lead generation. Go through your phone. Monica does the DT, D2. Start with all the A's and all the W's and call them and just say, hey, just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. I know the market's changed. Wanted to see if there was anything I can help out with, any clarity I can bring to you. Rest assured your home value is solid, but if you want a comparative market analysis, I'll be happy to send you one. And there's not a lot of work, guys. Just go to RPR, punch in their address, and email them a full report. 87 pages of their house, and they're going to think you're a genius, right? Which we are. We're just leveraging and delegating. But thank you guys so much. It's awesome to see everyone on here.
Thank you, Philip.
Yeah.